the safest
There we
place.
Okay.
Lurking next
We're
to
ready.
me.
So what are we talking about, Jane?
He's the host. James
I know.
is the host.
I'm the host. So welcome to the Aeon 14 podcast. My name is James S. Aaron. Who do we have? Who's here?
Amy Duboff.
Jen McDonald.
Michael Cooper.
Lisa Richmond.
Andrew Devil.
And Tex is off screen, but he's helping us out too. So,
Let us know if you can hear us.
oh, we can hear
It's
through
working.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We're not getting feedback. So we're all in Las Vegas right now for a conference, which is not related to Aeon 14, but there's been a lot of discussion. Andrew, are you flipping off the camera? Oh, I thought you were.
I'm just directing.
But it gave us an opportunity to all be in one place together, which we only get to do virtually, typically. So it's been a lot of fun. I think we don't necessarily have an agenda. Michael might have an agenda. I don't have an agenda.
I have no agenda.
For this podcast. We just really wanted to take the opportunity to kind of commemorate this. So,
Yeah.
is there anything anyone would like to share about the week so far and what they have learned?
Star Trek is not hard science fiction.
Star Trek is not science fiction.
And Michael talks really, really fast.
Yeah.
And very eloquently and knowledgeably.
Well, I think everybody knows I talk fast already. That's been established with all of these podcasts. I imagine.
That's true.
I will say, so one thing fans might not be aware of is that Michael, if you do any kind of digital marketing, Michael actually wrote a book called Help My Facebook Ads Suck. There are a lot of things that we talk about marketing and things in general, and Michael just kind of talks about the background. And I have not had the opportunity to see him get on stage and talk about these things in what I thought was actually a pretty awesome way. I can definitely see why that book is doing as well as it has been, because I think you did really well at that.
Thanks.
I thought you made it clear. Nobody stabbed you, I don't think. I had to
No,
leave.
no stabbing.
I had to leave early because there were some controversial statements that were made.
It was, yeah.
What do you? Because I was telling Tex about it, and the first thing he said was, "But he can't stop writing fiction, right?"
No, people actually approached me afterwards and were like, "Could you run my ads for me?" I'm like, "Nope, I got fiction to write."
He's got words to write.
Yeah.
Man.
So one thing I was thinking about was when you take a look at like some of the reach you had as an author before you started doing marketing, like.
Chad asked if we could. He says, I just tuned in. Can you go around and say who is who real quick? I'm sorry, I just interrupted you.
That's all right. Let's do that again real quick for Chad. And
Yeah.
then, so
One time for Chad.
I don't know, one time again for Chad and anyone else. I'm James.
Amy,
Jen.
Michael.
Lisa,
Andrew.
And
So-
we have Tex joining us in the
Yes, Tex is this
Yeah.
side. So we were talking about one thing that Michael has done as part of, really it is an important part of Aeon 14. I think something we don't talk about a lot is the marketing of it, because we kind of live and work in a time when you have to operate in a market, right? And if you don't approach the market in a certain way, your work is not going to be seen. Like how many folks, we've seen discussions in the group before where folks said, hey, the first time I saw an ad about Aeon 14, or the first time I kind of saw that thing, and that's something that Michael's put a lot of thought into.
Yeah.
Would you say, do you see that as like two sides of what you do as a writer? And
It's a pretty important thing. Like if I hadn't figured out how to advertise the series, none of this would be here.
Yeah.
Aeon 14 would have been 3 or 4 books long, and that would probably been it. So the fact that I figured out how to run Facebook ads and whatnot is pretty pivotal, I think, as far as people keeping it going. Now, because we release so many books, I don't have to advertise as much because the books themselves function as ads by just existing and being out there. But it is still actually a pretty big part. Like I think probably of the gross royalties that Aeon 14 brings in, we probably spend about 10 to 15% back on advertising to bring new readers into the series and keep it going.
Yeah.
So and of course, the more readers come in, the more we get to do. So it's good for everybody.
Yeah.
Well,
So tell your friends.
I think another thing that helps is you plan so far out that in the back of your books you say the next several books that are going to be coming out over the next months.
Yeah.
And a lot of I've never seen authors have that kind of foresight, and so I think that's really helpful as well, because that lets people know that there is more planned, there's more coming,
Yeah, that is part of
and
it
when
too.
to expect it, which is just great.
well, it's funny because you think about science fiction writers who imagine, like, I'm thinking about this because I just had a conversation with a business analyst today, and one of the things that he was talking about that writers in general aren't very good at it is that kind of planning. And like, so a science fiction writer envisions the future, imagines the future, but in a way you're making the future happen by doing these things, right? And if you don't do that, it's not going to happen.
It's true. Yeah.
So it is a pretty important part of what you're working on. Hopefully all of us can do that, I think. But I don't know. So do you see that as being like a bigger part of what you're doing as a writer, like doing more nonfiction, or?
I don't think so. I mean, I might write 1 or 2 more nonfiction books, but nonfiction books if you write a nonfiction book about a topic you know about, they're really easy to write. Because you just basically write as fast as you can, when you're plotting a book, it's slower. You think like, what's this character going to do? Does this make sense? You know, is this a terrible tactic that no one would ever employ? But when it's something that like a real nonfiction thing that you know, you just simply write down what you know. It goes really fast. You can write a nonfiction book in a matter of days. So even if I did write a couple, don't worry, it's not going to slow things down. It won't be the end of the world. But I love writing fiction, so
yeah.
I don't want to build a big nonfiction career. But by the same token, it's pretty cool. Like I had some authors come up to me today and say that my nonfiction book has like changed their lives, and that they've been able to quit their day job and are making like good money as a writer now. Because there's I think there's about a dozen of them that they came up and told me that.
It gets you in all the feels.
It does.
No,
It does
it's
hit me in the
right.
feels. Just to think that I was able to write this book and it's like changed people's lives. I know that Aeon 14 has to have people to write so that it helps them a lot too.
Yeah.
If for nothing else than a bad drive every day, that's the way to work.
Yeah.
But it's cool to do that and get that sort of feedback.
All 3 women that I'm staying with in my hotel room, they were all still talking about your talk when I was leaving to come here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they were like, tell him we loved his talk. And then they went back to talking about, so you're impacting people.
Yeah, you guys aren't going to get close to me after this now. I'll be mobbed.
Mobbed.
I know. People
It
are
happened
going to
last year,
ask
'cause
for his autograph.
Last year, Jill was. I don't think it's not quite that. They want me to solve all their problems.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different. Yeah, Jill said last year after my talk, she couldn't get close to me anymore.
I know. Jill was watching over the live feed.
Was she?
Yeah,
Cool.
she was writing about it.
She's on right now watching. Yeah.
Oh, is
Hi,
she?
Jill.
Oh,
Hi,
neat.
Jill.
Hey, Jill.
/ Chris J. Pike.
Yes.
Yes. I think being able to understand those things probably maybe is a function of that same approach you have for Aeon 14 and thinking through issues in Aeon 14, and in a way marketing is a problem to solve and imagine the future is a problem to solve.
Yep.
So
This is still more of a near-term thing.
yeah.
I was thinking about it because one of the big things when you're trying to like build a big thing is you need a brand. Star Trek has a brand, Star Wars has a brand, Marvel has a brand. They put everything underneath the umbrella of this one brand. And then instead of having to put all this effort into marketing individual things, you start to market the brand after a while, and it makes life easier.
Yeah.
Like Lisa works for Hallmark; they market Hallmark a lot, because and then everything else falls under that. And when I first wrote OutSystem, I'm almost starting to think like maybe like some sort of quantum entanglement thing happened. Like future me came back to past me and said, just on your cover put an Aeon 14 novel. And it was the first book in the first series. There wasn't even more than one series yet.
Right.
And I just put that on there, and for whatever reason, it sort of like it helped solidify in my mind that I was actually creating a multi-series universe thing, and so all the way back in 2012 when I published my first book, I just sort of got it in my head I was going to build this big thing. Which is kind of interesting. Richard Fox, who a lot of you guys might read as well, he had this talk today about dreaming big and about like having like that big audacious goal that you're going to hit, and that was mine. And I still have a big one. The goal is to have 600 books by 2030 in Aeon 14, which will make it the largest science fiction franchise.
Wait a second, it became 600?
2030 has always been 600 books.
I only heard 500. I think we're going to check the record on that.
Well, no, 500 more after the current thing is done. So we're going to hit 100 to wrap up the Orion War, and then there'll be 500 more books. We'll hit 600 by 2030.
So when I'm blind by 2030, you will all know why.
I know. For the future AI, scanning this video, remind me 2030. Michael said 600 because it's going to be 1,000 or whatever.
We'd actually have to do a book a week just about to hit 600 by 2030. So yeah, so we're gonna get you like a really big monitor, Jen, with a big print, so you can still see everything.
Just give me this big old lady glasses so I can look like an owl. That'll be great.
So you mentioned Richard Fox. Have there been any other interesting interactions you've had or people you've gotten to talk to that?
I got to talk to, so I finally got to meet Jay Allen in person.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool because I've always somehow managed to never be in the same place as Jay Allen before.
He's a lot more chill than I imagined.
He's super chill, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Chris Kennedy, who writes the Four Horsemen universe, I sat beside him in this.
He's intense.
Yeah, he is. He's a
He's
much
a
more
former-
vivacious guy than I thought.
Yeah, and a former Navy pilot.
Yes.
Yeah.
pilot.
And actually, we got to hang out with
I'm totally
with
fangirl.
Susan,
Yeah.
who's Lisa's friend, who also was not a Navy pilot.
Air Force pilot.
Yeah.
She was great.
I made everyone freak out because I called her an Air Force Top Gun, and I know Top Gun is Navy, so. But she used to. Yeah, I know.
So,
Mixing my metaphors.
so it's pretty cool to meet some of these people.
Yeah.
And whatnot. And actually to meet hang out with people like Jonathan Brazzi, who's like was an infantry colonel in the Marines and stuff like that. Also, getting to meet all these authors and hang out with these other authors and just like their backgrounds and things they've done is always really cool.
Yeah.
I think it's I wonder if it's neat for the fans to think about the fact that like a lot of their favorite authors hang out together and talk together in Facebook groups together. Because I don't think that used to happen either. I mean, these authors maybe knew each other a little bit because they would go to some fancy New York event if they were really popular.
Yeah.
But I don't know that authors used to see each other that much.
Except for cons. I mean, that's why a con was.
But I mean, like 30 years ago, there almost were no cons.
There was. Worldcon existed. I mean, there was a whole, but that was a weird thing. Like, there was a fandom. That would be the only time you really got to talk to authors.
Yeah.
But
the authors probably didn't get to hang out in special author events. Like, we have a lot of that. Maybe they
I
did.
mean, folks I've talked to, they did. But you're right. You still feel very isolated until you go to the convention.
Yeah.
It certainly wouldn't have been regular communication.
Yeah, which we get to
like
do all the
we
time.
chat pretty much every day on
Right.
Slack with each other.
Right.
And then we have Facebook groups that are
we're chatting with half of these other, like, I probably talk with like 15, 20 different science fiction authors every week, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just kind of neat to think that, like, you know, half of your favorite science fiction authors are all friends.
Yeah.
I mean, the University of Oregon just got Ursula Le Guin's papers when she passed. But one of the things that they have there is like her correspondence with James Tiptree, who was and Allison Sheldon.
Okay.
But so when James Tiptree, first contacted Ursula Le Guin, like she didn't know that she was a woman, but they had this whole correspondence. It was all part of that. Nobody ever, like Ursula Le Guin talked about that, like nobody ever wrote her letters hardly that were writers, and this person wrote her a letter and was really, So I don't know. I think it's really cool that we get to kind of interact as much as we do.
Well, it reminds me of like the Transcendental Age when like all those great thinkers were friends, like Emerson and Thoreau, and like and Emerson and Emily Dickinson had interaction and
we're just like that.
interaction.
We're just like that. We're the
Dickinson
Enlightenment.
was a little
You can just call us the new
isolated,
Enlightenment.
but you know what I mean? Like, I
Influence.
love that. There's like community and it looks different as
Exactly. We're more like the Inklings, the J.R. Tolkien and the
Sure.
C.S.
Yeah.
Lewis and
So who's the Christian that has to bring everybody else to Christ then? Because that's what Tolkien's job was.
not it.
oh.
Not it.
Andrew.
I'm J.K. Rowling.
It's probably Michael. I mean, Michael has read more deeply the Bible than any of us, I think.
True.
So.
Yeah, it's gonna be my job. I'm gonna be the Tolkien. You'll be Lewis. I'll try to get
The
King's-
token Tolkien.
The Tolkien.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh my god, you guys, I heard the best joke today. Don't spoil it, because I already told Lisa. What's brown and sticky?
That's pretty broad.
A story about a guy on Delta Airlines.
Oh my god, that's what Lisa said. No, it's
It's a stick.
Oh my god.
Wow, wow.
That's like such a dad joke.
I know.
Terrible.
Those are my favorite.
Yeah, if you guys don't know about the Delta Airlines
It's
story.
it was Delta.
Yeah. Yeah. Just Google it. It'll ruin your
Yeah,
day.
Delta Airlines and poop. Don't Google
And
it.
don't.
You don't want to know.
Yeah, like how we brought it up
And apparently
at
no one-
dinner.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
And then again at dessert. And then
While we were eating chocolate ice cream, it was fantastic.
Yeah. Amy's so proud of her husband.
Yeah, I really am. I know, he's
Oh,
amazing.
Chad just gave us the poop emoji.
also, yes.
Thanks, Chad.
Let's see. Where are you seeing like comments on the?
I see it. I see it on the
Oh.
chat. Yeah.
Oh, there. I didn't click
Yeah.
on it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget why I
You've got good eyesight.
Oh, there we
It's
go.
right there on your screen.
Oh, neat. We have comments.
Yeah.
Comments.
There's stuff.
Oh.
If
and
anyone
Rob-
wants to ask questions, ask questions.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right. You can ask
That's
questions.
what we should say.
and we're still refining Snark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got to play test the final version and make sure that
Yeah.
works properly.
It's a really fun game.
It is.
So we do have a
Very good.
question. So Mark Geller asks,
Hey, Goob.
if self-publishing was not so easy, do you think N14 would have gotten off the ground under the standard publishing model?
Nope, I really wouldn't. Well, I mean, the first book I wrote was Destiny Lost. It got changed a bit after I wrote the others before it, but I tried querying that novel for 5 years and was rejected by everybody. And then if I had even got that novel published, it would have been 1 a year. So we would be probably on book 3
Oh my God.
at this point. So it wouldn't, you would just, it would never have happened. I don't think it wouldn't be possible. Like, well, very few things got as big as this. Like this is, we're getting close to being Dragonlance or Forgotten Realms. Well, Forgotten Realms is bigger, but we're like probably bigger than Dragonlance.
Yeah, I mean,
at this
Star Wars Expanded Universe. I mean, the Star Trek novels. You're right. It wouldn't. That's certainly not this fast.
Yeah, those are the only things that ever used to get that big.
Yeah.
Now, like
Yeah.
Kutherian
Those are
Gambit's
decades.
over 100.
Yeah.
Over
Fortunes at
decades,
60,
yeah. One a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say self-publishing is like it's deceptively easy.
Yes.
It's easy to publish. It's not easy to be discovered. To make a product that people are going to respond to.
To be successful.
We have something like right now, 80,000 books a month are being published on Amazon.
Yeah.
So finding.
And what was that chart? So what percentage of that is actually being purchased?
Purchase, it's a hockey stick like everything else, but it makes it really hard for new authors to become visible because it's them and like 80,000 other people that just published a book.
There's like the top 19% or 80% of the revenue or something like it.
Yeah,
I don't think those numbers are
a very
quite
small
right,
number
but-
has a large amount.
Yeah.
There's a top of the funnel, definitely.
Yeah, which is kind of the case with everything. It's just
That's
sort of the way
true.
the world works,
That's
but
true.
it does make it really hard to break into the market, and which is why I help a lot of other authors with marketing because that's the only way to do it. If it's you and 80,000 other books, how's anyone ever going to find your book? So
Yeah.
you have to understand how to find the readers to get them to read your book.
Can you imagine what life would be like today? I mean, we're writers, but we're all voracious readers too. And to not have the indie publishing model, we'd be hunting for things to read ourselves.
Well, we used to do that. I remember when I was younger, going to the bookstore, and like I read all these books.
I
bought all the ones I
know.
cared to buy. I went to go to the
I know.
library, got everything from the library, so you just have to reread books all the
Yeah.
time. Just like you poor guys have had to do for the last 3 weeks. It's been terrible. I mean, to reread books.
What
My-
about 80s?
Yeah.
Actually, the UK has it already, right?
UK will have it at,
Yes, Australia.
Australia has
Australia.
it.
if it's, what
Doesn't
time
it-
is it in the UK right now?
Is it midnight?
+8, right?
Really?
Yeah, it should be,
It's on my
should be
phone.
out.
It is
One.
1:10.
Yeah, so they've got it now in the
AM.
UK too.
UK.
AM.
Do we have new releases to talk about? I didn't follow the format this time.
So next Thursday is going to be Earth and Ascendancy, which I'm desperately, frantically trying to write. And Jen is being really hard on me, so if it doesn't come out on time, it's not her fault at all. It's my fault. I would never actually blame you for that, Jen. You're like looking through my eyes like you're trying to like.
He has sent me 5,800 words. I have edited all 5,800 of those words.
Which means you basically didn't like it.
What are you talking about? She's
Oh, I
waiting
yelled-
for more.
I yelled at him at the end of the pages, and now he's all sensitive about
I
it.
didn't actually read it. You told me 1,000 changes.
No, that wasn't yours.
Oh, I thought that was mine. I'm like, you got it. I thought you made
No.
1,000 changes in 35 pages. I thought
no,
like I
no,
failed.
No, I thought you were talking about me yelling at you at the end, but we already talked about why I was yelling
Yeah.
at you, and we had
Yeah, so anyway,
passed it.
so
Anyway,
all
yeah.
of that aside, Earth and
Not
Ascendancies
my
is
fault.
coming Thursday, so 1 week from tomorrow. And I might have to push off Kill Shot until December 6th, unless like I somehow manage to write that entire novel in like 3 days without sleeping. But I want to take more time with it.
Yeah,
So.
it doesn't seem reasonable.
And so James's book is probably going to move Vesta Burning from the 24th to the 22nd, so it'll be out 2 weeks from tomorrow. And then a week after that will be Kill Shot. And then a week after that is going to be the fanfic novel and Impulse Shock, the next Perilous Alliance book. And the week after that is Conquer, and then Christmas. And then maybe if we can get our butts, or if I can get my butt, you're more me than Andrew, Circa, Anomaly on Circa will be out.
Yeah.
So lots and lots of books.
Yeah,
We've actually got
sure.
books scheduled all the way up to January 31st now. That's when
Which
the
is-
next. That's when the next one of Lisa's
Yeah,
book comes
it's
out.
Tau Ceti's
Epsilon
Eridani.
Eridani. No, I thought we determined it was the other way around.
We need to look this up. Hold
Yeah,
on.
we-
No,
I-
it is, it's Eridani.
Yeah, because I was saying Eridani. I was saying Eridani.
We
I
were
mean,
telling
It
you.
has an A
You were
in
telling
it. You
him
can't
it
just
was
ignore
Eridani.
the A.
yeah,
You
well, it's not-
corrupted me.
I know I did corrupt you because I've always pronounced it Eridani, and Lisa's like it's Eridani.
Hold on.
And I went looked up and yeah, it's Eridnus is how the Eridnus is the river.
I had it right last night.
I've ruined you. Basically, I'm just going to change the pronunciation of everything in astronomy by being an idiot. And
You're right.
that's my plan.
So one thing we have been doing was I was thinking after you give your update, we could ask everybody else what they're working on currently. as
Sure.
well.
Yes.
So Amy, what are you working on?
I am starting my Aeon 14 series.
Nice.
I am
Nice.
a whopping 300 words in, so
Like a
that is phenomenal,
That's
right?
It's like
300
a
words
page.
you didn't have before. Good job.
Yes.
Just for those of you watching, it's like a page and a half.
Hey, you know,
Hey, that's
she's
300
doing
more than
great.
Epsilon.
Every book has to
Originally.
start somewhere.
You're a hard time.
I know you are encountering.
But we've spent a lot of time figuring out what we want to do and how to tie everything together. So Michael and I have been in communication
Yep.
on that. So I think we have a pretty cool story
I think we
figured
do
out.
too. It's gonna be fun. We're finally
And this
getting
is
ready.
this is the Serenity one for anyone who may
Yeah.
have.
So it's gonna be Aeon 14.
Terry's story.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terry. Yeah, the other Terry, not that Terry. The other Terry.
Not like the 6 other Terrys. It's the 7th.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we also get a lot of that from Jen.
Jen, you have
Oh,
updates
look,
you'd like to
another
share?
I'm
Aeon.
just doing my job, you guys. This is literally my job.
By the way, we do need to start another stuff, Jen says.
Stuff Jen
Yeah,
says.
yeah. Actually, yeah, we need to go back. We need to
We
comb
need
back
to-
through
yeah,
Tau
because
Ceti.
there were some epic ones in
Yeah.
Tau Ceti.
Oh,
So
were
that'll
they?
be something we'll do next
Was
week.
that my sleep deprivation? That might
You
have been
got a
my
little
sleep
crazy in that one.
deprivation.
So we'll comb back through that. We'll
Yeah,
start a
yeah,
new
yeah.
thread of stuff Jen says.
Right.
Should be pretty good.
Lisa, what are you working on?
I am in research mode with Epsilon Aridiny. Aridiny.
Arinia. I don't know. How,
You were gonna mess me up again. Stop it.
yes, I'm sorry.
Andrew?
Right, well, Aeon 14 wise, I recently finished doing the art for the calendar, so I'm guessing that's available now. And I'm
Yep.
sure some of you
Andrew,
got it.
Andrew like broke his wrist signing every
Yes,
single page.
I saw 25 of them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what covers I'm working on next for you.
I have no idea.
Do you not know?
We already did Orion Front.
Yes, we've done that.
I guess it's probably going to be the next Perilous Alliance cover.
Okay.
Coming around soon.
Alright, so I'm doing that. Obviously, I'm working on Anomaly on Circa. Keep on going with that. And then my own stuff will be Star My Guy 2 is my next project.
And your third one in your
Yes, the third one in my post-apocalyptic series will be out a week or two.
yeah, with Mad Max kind of thing. The,
Mad Max type thing.
Yeah, if you look up the model on the cover of Andrew's
yes.
books is actually the Cheeky model as well,
Yes.
so which is pretty awesome. So you can see basically if you wanted to imagine what Cheeky would look like holding a 5-foot sword, that's what you can go check out
Yeah.
those covers.
Cool stuff.
Um,
James.
I
What
am
are you working on,
so.
James?
I'm waiting for Michael's feedback on Vesta Burning, so we can get that out the door. The big thing I'm trying to work out now, which Vesta Burning helped me figure out in a way, is the plotting for the first Sentience Wars, and so that is like we're getting not only the overall arc for the 5 books, but then individually, and so I'm getting ready to send that to Michael so we can get those things pieced out because that's going to be complicated. So. It's really exciting, but it's just big. Like it's really been occupying my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, we could take the Sentience Wars and make it as many books as the Orion War, but we're going to try and pare it down and just follow it in just 5 novels because there's 2 Sentience Wars. So we've got to get these
I
things
know.
written eventually.
Yeah.
So is
well-
it Sentience Wars and the other Sentience
It
Wars?
was
The Sentience Wars to end all sentience.
historically they're called the Sentience Wars, but individually they're called Solar War 1 and Solar War 2.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's,
Yep. So and then I'm gonna write a story about M the Corgi, which I think we talked about. I just gotta make that
I don't
happen.
know you're right. No, we've been
We
talking
talked,
about
well, maybe Lisa and I talked
We
about it.
talked
I don't
about it,
remember. For the fan fiction book. I don't know. Maybe it was in chat. I don't
I
remember.
think
like,
it was
I
in
must have
Screen.
missed it.
I
Yeah.
remember seeing that.
Somebody-
I was
too.
going to write about Beck, and you were going to write about.
somebody
Or I was
wanted a
gonna
story
write
about
about
M the Corgi. So
your deadline is the 15th.
all right, I'm getting right on that. Yeah, we'll make that happen.
You got a week.
So yep, that's been what's happening.
Cool.
So
Yeah, the other thing actually, now it's gone out of my brain. I had this great thing. Jill's going to write a short story. It's not going to be in the fan fiction book, but it's going to be from Mr. Fizzlepop's view. Yes. Because what happened, if you guys remember, of course, Nadine and the team took over the Barbaric Queen. As far as Mr. Fizzlepop is concerned, he's the ship's cat, and these other people came in and took over his ship. So that's why he calls them all assholes. As far as he's concerned, they're invaders, So she's going to write this story from Mr. Fizzlepop's viewpoint as the good guys take over Mr. Fizzlepop's ship and why he hates them so much. And that's actually why he's a little bit nicer to Kylie and Rickett because they weren't part of the group that stole the ship from him.
Oh, that's
I
just
only
wrong.
just recently discovered Mr. Fizzlepop because those weren't books that I had gotten to read before, and I like instantly fell in love with him. So I'm really excited.
He's basically our cat at home. He's a male version of the cat that Jill and I have, who's just like this grumpy cat. And she screams all the time and stuff like that. She like quite literally screams, like she's just top of her lungs. And you'll be, I'll be sitting in my room just like writing, and suddenly I hear her just screaming, and I walk in the bedroom, and she's just standing on the bed, just stretching. And she's like, I thought she's like dead or something like that. It's crazy.
Hear me, world.
Yeah. We got any comments that folks have?
Oh, Chad wanted to know, it's M the corgi.
Yeah.
No, the battle corgis?
Well,
M.
It's not.
M is the corgi from
On the Sunny Skies.
Sunny
Yeah.
Skies, yeah.
Yeah. He's not a battle corgi. He's just a
No,
regular corgi.
he's
maybe he'll
Cara
become
and Will's.
and Tim's.
And Cara and Tim's.
Technically, Tim's
pet.
dog.
Tim's dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he's a throwback to Aeon from Cowboy Bebop. So I might do something to play with that. Let's see. There was a question.
About teal and glitter. Will,
Oh, it's Gladys.
he's waiting for me to deliver on Gladys, I think.
Oh.
His glasses came around, but she's still back at Alpha Centauri.
She's back at Alpha Centauri, so we'll have to.
You have to write a short story about Gladys.
Yeah, we have to write a short
Yeah.
story about her.
Yeah.
Let's see. Kyle asks, how do you find time to read other books as you write new stories?
I know. I read lots of books. These people write them. Those are my books. I kind of like I used to read 500 books a year, which now isn't really that much. Like guys like John Stripe can like blast through a book in like in 2 hours. I used to be all like, I read 500 books a year. John Stripe reads 500 books a month. But I feel like I built up a mental library of a lot of stuff. But I purposely also don't read out non-Aeon 14 books right now because I don't want to be colored by them. I want Aeon 14 to sort of be its thing and have as few outside influences as possible. Once I get this, in 2030, I'll read some books again. That's my plan.
Do you want to go through who's reading what? If people are reading.
Anybody have anything?
I do.
I just finished reading
Go
Tau
ahead.
Ceti.
In addition to Aeon 14, I do read Barry Hutchinson's Space Team series, and if you want a laugh, I would highly, highly recommend it.
Barry is
It's
a
very,
truly
very good.
talented writer. He is really good.
He is amazing. I mean, he's the only writer who I've read, and he's actually got me to having to put the book down and calm myself down because I have tears running down my face from laughing so much. I mean, that's a rare talent.
His story in the upcoming Bob's Bar did the same
It is
thing. I just
hilarious.
laughed my head because
It is
Arger
hilarious.
is this little cross-dressing leprechaun.
Green thing. Like,
And the thing that he was when you guys read Bob's Bar, don't skip that story because the part where he says like everybody's got a signature move, right? When you find out this leprechaun's signature move, you're gonna lose it. That's all I'm gonna give you. You're gonna have to wait for that.
We're not, no spoilers for that.
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so what am I reading?
Yeah. What are you reading?
I'm reading Terry Nixon's first book,
Oh, okay.
and Your Dark Star. She's got a Dark Star trilogy. So,
I think it's Dark Stars. There's more than one.
stars.
I just read Sarah Nofke's Everybody in LA is an Asshole. It's completely different than everything else I get to read. It's nonfiction, and it is published, so it's okay that I'm advertising this. But she's a science fiction author living in LA, and she's like on a dating app, and so she's going on these dates, and it's kind of navigating life as a single mom with like an ex-husband and a kid and going on these dates, and it is hilarious. I haven't laughed out loud that often
She's
in a really long time.
What series is she writing? Kutherian Gambit?
She wrote in Age of Expansion. She was part of the Ghost Squadron series.
Right.
They're also working on Intergalactic Pest Control. The first one is out. I have the second one that will be out in 2 weeks.
Are you serious? That's
Yes.
called? That's awesome.
And also
Yes.
Precious Galaxies.
Oh yes, and Precious Galaxies.
Yeah, so she's got a lot going on too.
Yeah.
I read mostly nonfiction right now.
You
Like,
skipped Amy.
oh, I skipped Amy? I'm sorry, Amy. Go
I
ahead.
don't really read that much, honestly, guys. I'm sorry.
Uh-oh.
The most recent reading that I did was
Yes.
all of the research stuff for what I'm going to be
Yeah, she had to
writing.
read Percy
Carol,
Escape.
I-
Percy Escape. Yeah.
So because I am dealing with words with writing, I tend to like to do my recharging by just like binge watching Netflix series. So, but I watch them really intentionally and dissecting them with the character arcs and the story arcs and the beats and all of that. So that tends to be my entertainment more than reading. I do really like reading, but that's what I do on vacation. But when I'm in work mode and I'm writing, I like to get away from the words and work on the visuals aspect of things.
I'm reading The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly. I don't know if you can see this. I read a lot of nonfiction related to things that I think can help with the work. This one is about changes taking place probably in the next 30 years. But then I just finished Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom, which are some of the things this book touches on about considering different things about AI and human-AI interaction and how we think about even like groups of humans that are actually a superintelligence. We just don't think of them that way, and so combining, AI with humans and different levels of AI, that was all pretty cool stuff. And then I just recently finished the Bobiverse books.
You read all the Bobiverse books?
Yeah, they're really fast reads. Cool. And those were, because it was AI based too. It was fun.
Chris Kennedy, who writes the Four Horsemen, said he's been thinking about talking to Dennis Taylor about doing a crossover between his series and the Bobiverse.
Oh, really? More Bobiverse would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny because he released the Bobiverse books right around when OutSystems started taking off as well. It's just kind of funny. Like, I'm like, I've got Bob, he's got Bob, and then we do Bob's Bars. All big AIs are Bob.
It's all about Bob.
Oh, yeah. Oh, very well played.
All about Bob. Yeah. I listen to a lot of audiobooks because that's about the only time I have to read. I was reading that on the plane, but it's actually been a pretty fast read. So if I run into something like it's too hard, I don't have time to like really keep beating my head at it, Cool.
I'm also going back and rereading I'm reading the Perilous Alliance.
Oh,
That's the one I'm reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be.
I don't know, because I have the omnibus, so I don't know when one ends and then the next.
There's no omnibus of that.
I have 1 through 3 in the same, because I finished Gate of the Grey Wolf Star, so whatever comes after.
Oh, you're reading
Gate of the Grey
Perseus
Wolf
Gate.
Star. Perseus Gate, okay.
Okay.
I'm reading one of the P ones. Okay, Perseus Gate, so I'm on the second book.
Because you actually should read the early Perilous Alliance ones at some point too, because you're editing that series now as well. You don't actually, you have to. It's okay, Jen, you'll survive.
Someday I'll catch up and then I'll be dead.
Don't say that.
Jen's glass is always
We keep her
not
really,
quite
really
full.
busy.
It's fine. I'm smiling, it's fine.
I'm smiling, it's fine. I like that.
So what is something from one of the science fiction panels that surprised you? Was there anything that you heard or anything you thought readers might find interesting?
I was preparing for my presentation a lot, so I didn't see a lot of them. I was on the military science fiction one, so I didn't see that. I thought it was interesting because a couple of the guys have served that were on that panel, and a number of them haven't. It was kind of neat that the guys who served were all like very supportive of authors who write military science fiction who haven't served. That Chris Fox was like,
Richard Fox.
Richard Fox was saying that Tom Clancy did not work in the CIA, and he wrote some amazing books. His argument for how he was able to do it is he had a library card,
And to prove that point, that a library card works.
Yeah.
My husband's a physicist, and he teaches physics, and he uses the description in A Sum of All Fears, Tom Clancy's book, in his class. He reads the description of an atomic bomb going off because it's that accurate. So you don't have to be an expert.
Yeah, it's true. You just have to listen to a lot of experts and stuff like that. Make friends with experts and read a lot of books.
Right.
And J.K. Rowling is obviously not a wizard, and somehow
That
she wrote.
we know.
That we know.
I know.
She could be like a.
Are you suggesting
Although-
she befriended Gandalf or something?
If she is away in, though, I
Maybe she
want
did.
her.
I've
If
met
she is
people
away in,
who-
she needs to share that.
Anybody tries to tell you they're a wizard, you should just turn and back away because
Slowly.
there are no expert wizards out there.
we had some great I learned like the funniest thing about how Star Wars would have ended by having we fell into a conversation about Star Wars last night with a whole bunch of authors, and it kind of went crazy. But I heard somewhere this weekend someone was talking about the way that the original Star Wars movie should have ended was when Obi-Wan Kenobi gets onto the Death Star. He should have activated his lightsaber and dropped it. And it just would have gone right to the Death Star to the core in the middle and blown the thing up, and it would have been movie over, So you're on the Millennium Falcon, you just reach out, drop it, fly away, mission accomplished. That's damn.
Ruins the storyline.
really does, yeah. So that was the best thing I learned about science fiction this weekend. Actually, was that Obi-Wan could have destroyed everything.
Best and worst.
Yeah, best and worst.
The Mill Sci-Fi panel also talked about. I liked what you said about being sensitive to, you can't make your characters Teflon. You can't make the good guys Teflon and they never get hurt. And while they're mowing down 700
bad guys, yeah.
Bad guys, I thought that was a really good.
Yeah, and you have to make it so they're not monsters. They treat the bad guys like they're real people.
Right.
So they do take prisoners, and they run search and rescue operations on enemy ships and stuff. Because otherwise they're just terrible,
And what they were doing was the panel was refuting an accusation by someone in the mainstream that calls military sci-fi
death porn.
Death porn.
Right.
And it's really not.
Yeah.
And they were defending, they were explaining why it's not.
Yeah.
Let's see, what did we talk about on the space opera one? You weren't there.
I wasn't
I'm
there,
looking
no.
at you. Who was in the audience? It's weird being up on stage. That's a different perspective.
Yeah, you're thinking more about the next question. What
Yeah.
you're gonna say.
Right.
Yeah.
I think one of the main things we talked about was the difference between space opera versus military sci-fi, and how space opera can be kind of a more general umbrella, and there are the subsections in it, and it's kind of more of a Venn diagram situation.
Yeah.
So you can have military sci-fi that is space opera, but it doesn't have to be. And if you look at Amazon categories, it can get kind of muddy because a lot of people will stick stuff in there, but I tend to go off of the Wikipedia definition of space opera, which is kind of the Star Warsian. It's the big hero's journey, dramatic story arc. So if you've read my Cataclysm series, that is very much classic space opera. It has some quasi-military elements, but it's mostly about the character journey, and I think that was the main takeaway. Yeah.
Whereas like Aeon 14 straddles the line a lot, because even though Tannis is in the military, very little up to Aeon 14 is about life in the military. Some of it is like Rika is a lot more about life in the military. But Tannis is more of a space opera, high view. And part of it, and scope, yeah. And actually, even like Richard Fox was saying, he's like, because Richard Fox used to be a Army intel guy. He's like, if I could describe to you what happened in a bunker if we were planning XYZ, it would just be 3 or 4 pages of acronyms and then an explosion at the end. He's like, it wouldn't be interesting. So there is a balance you have to strike between that sort of thing.
You can have too much reality in there.
Yeah.
As Jen will tell you.
Yeah.
It's no longer escape.
Yeah, exactly. That's the big thing too. It has to be escape. Which I think in some respects, military, like hardcore military science fiction, like if you're, I read Starfist by David Sherman and I think Dan and Craig.
Starfist.
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 Oh, that's what you said.
Yeah, Starfist. And that stuff is like, it's like ground pounders, just a platoon of people that are trying to survive a mission. Well, it was a company. But, and that's that one is more difficult because that does run the risk of being death porn and being just too nitty gritty and not being uplifting because a lot of people die. But it can be done. I'm just not as good at it, so I don't write that stuff.
I didn't get a chance to ask a question, but I was really curious about how, because to me, a lot of military sci-fi represents certain eras or is a reflection of the combat people are experiencing in those eras, and I wondered if the authors thought about that, or if they were trying to
because two of those guys have degrees in military history.
Yeah.
So I bet you that does influence them a bit. But it's also a risk too. Like a lot of times what bugs me with some military sci-fis are like, well, the structure of the platoon will be like this, and you call this guy that, and it's like, well, we didn't do that 40 years ago. What makes you think that we're going to do that 4,000 years from now?
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful. If you were to make it exactly like modern stuff, it would be ridiculous that it hasn't changed.
Right.
If you look at the history of the military, lots of stuff has changed.
Right.
Like a lot of the ranks that used to exist don't exist. There was, the Air Force is part of the Army. There's all sorts of stuff that's different.
Well, so much of it's a function of the tech you have, because
Yeah.
like even like small unit tactics are all based on the effective ranges of like M16s and machine guns. And, if you're using like weapons with huge standoff ranges, like you have to do any of that stuff, so it's all totally different.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, if everyone has a rifle that can shoot a couple kilometers, then suddenly all of your tactics change.
Yeah, even Jay Allen was saying today that most likely in the future it's just going to be a bunch of people underground in a bunker and they're going to be controlling.
Right.
But that would make for a really boring story.
Drones. Yeah.
I mean, you could probably make it interesting.
Well,
I think you could actually make that quite interesting.
I didn't refute that
Could be
because
a thriller.
it'd be rude, but that would not happen. Because all I do is hack your radio signal.
That's true.
Boom, now I control all your drones. There's a reason why you put the intelligence that's doing the work inside the thing, because you want to make it so that there's no abilities. Once the radio signal, that's like all the enemy's going to work on is hacking your radio signal.
Yeah.
That's going to become the warfare, and then once they do, boom, you're done. But if you put the intelligence right in the soldier, Yeah, it's already happening. We have to worry about the fact that our drones could be taken over by someone else.
I was
Stuff
definitely
like
working
that.
on it.
So I think that maybe it would happen, but you actually could write an interesting story about that. They all
Yeah.
do that, then the enemy hacks their signal, and now everybody's got to
Yeah.
go up and fight because you can't use the drones anymore. No one knows how to, or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, that's what the stories are.
Yeah.
And that's actually why I like writing science fiction, because it's the technology and then the limitations and the foibles of the technology create all these situations that you get to then write about.
Yeah.
Like right now, Epsilon is trying to get Quancoms because he wants to get in on the communication without the people knowing. You know, she's trying to crack the Enigma machine.
I'm actually sad because I think Ethereum is getting disproved in this book.
Oh
No
no!
spoilers. I know. I'm all sad.
I'm kind of curious as to what another AI is going
Can we
to
be
do.
heard?
Can we
No, they
speak
can't
up?
hear you guys at all.
Yep.
Oh, we're okay.
Oh.
They're speculating what's
You
going to
know,
happen in
one
Ryan War.
Yeah, we're speculating. One of the things that I found interesting was the conversation that we had while we were playing Snark, and Jeff came up, and you guys were talking about how
Jeff who?
Yes.
yeah,
Oh, Jeff Haskell. Okay.
and you guys were talking about how you hold
The guns. Yeah.
and how
Do you want me to?
games.
Oh, talk about how like
Yeah.
how kids coming into the military now
Yes.
after playing
Oh, yes.
Battlefield are learning
Yes.
tactics than
Yeah.
other than people that are in the military.
And that the army is
And they're coming into the army knowing tactics already, in some cases being better at them than actual trained soldiers, because they've understood
Right.
things like if you stand still, someone's gonna get behind you and kill you, and so on and so forth. And,
Will might have some input into this. I don't know.
you might.
but they're also, holding the gun in the proper way.
Yeah, they know how to hold
Yeah,
the guns.
they know how
They
to-
understand
right.
like counting their ammo to make sure they know when they have to reload and stuff like that. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things that they. I mean, maybe they're not terribly good at, but at least they know a lot of the basics that they wouldn't know otherwise.
Right, and that was
or
his
like,
point.
If you go to the machine gun emplacement, you're probably gonna die. That's like if you're playing Battlefield, there's a machine gun sitting there. That's just how you die if you go stand in a machine gun. You kill like one guy. The other thing you learn playing Battlefield is a helicopter can always see you and shoot you from anywhere. Is what it feels like.
I mean, the problem with autonomy in a game is totally different than being part of a unit. But
Yeah,
Right.
still, I'd be
Right.
curious how
You still have to teach all the
that
tactics.
works. Yeah. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, I've kind of heard you might have like a few that are like that, and then a few that. Can
Well,
really
I mean,
go
I guess the I'm thinking is like the clans, like the people
Yeah.
that play. They still call them clans. I haven't like been in group gaming in a long
I
time.
don't even play.
I think
multi-game.
in fantasy games they do. I don't think.
Well, when I used to play Counter-Strike heavily, the people, they worked on tactics all the time, and they were like in
Yeah.
communication with each other, and they would practice tactics and certain maneuvers and stuff like that. So I feel like to a certain extent they do know how to work as a group really well.
Yeah.
Especially because when these people play professionally, they play for a lot of money.
Yeah.
So they do know, they spend a lot of time.
So you get
learning
the
that
guy that's so dumb he can't dig a foxhole, and he's your battle buddy.
stuff. Oh, if you had one of
I
those.
had that guy.
Yeah.
Private Rose, I remember him very well.
How do you not
Oh,
really dig a
he's not
foxhole?
watching this.
You put the shovel into the ground. Like, this is not hard.
It was hard for him.
Poor Private Rose.
I know. I have an offline story to tell you about Private Rose that we're not going to
Okay.
share in the group. That isn't, I mean, and actually, because another thing too is just like as off-the-shelf stuff becomes more and more accessible. Like maybe you don't even have to hack the signal. You just send something cheap, like a swarm of cheap bots at that military,
Yeah.
weapon, and
You just dump it.
Attrition.
yeah.
You just dump so many cheap bots on them that they somehow, or you just EMP them.
Mhm.
Because there's no humans around you care about. You just EMP the hell out of them until they're gone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but I guess that's the interesting thing though, is that you develop a weapon, the enemy develops a way to stop that weapon,
Right.
and then they develop a bigger weapon, which is what we're seeing in the Orion War, right? Like it started out like we're just like pew-pewing each other. They're like stasis shields, can't beat those. And they're like, if we fire proton beams up your engine wash, then we can get you, or atom beams. And then that went to DMGs now, where it's basically they're like powering weapons with black holes. And there are 2 more levels that the weapons are going to go up from there as the different sides try to counter each other. But the problem, of course, in the Orion War is that we're moving towards galaxy-destroying levels of weaponry that these guys are starting to have, which is getting pretty dangerous.
I know.
Which is, I guess, the big concern too. Is
Why
like,
did the feed end? Because someone just blasted a thing like that.
yeah.
How long does that take to reach the galaxy? Like, can you sit there and watch it for a couple of years?
What do you mean?
Or, well, if you have a galaxy destroying, like, how long does it take that weapon to cross the
destroy.
galaxy?
Oh, I guess I wasn't thinking you destroy the galaxy all at once.
Oh, okay.
It wouldn't be like one kaboom that would destroy the galaxy.
Kaboom!
We could be in the course of that kaboom right now. Like,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
gonna
the
take-
center of the galaxy is 25,000 light years away. So, I mean, that's actually, if anyone's ever read Larry Niven's books, the premise is that the supermassive black hole at the core of the galaxy has exploded. And it's just going to take 25,000 years for the explosion to get to Earth. So no one's really worrying about it too much yet, but some people are already are on their way out, which is kind of cool. Like that's what the whole premise is. Like certain civilizations are on the move, and certain civilizations are like, you got a while, you know. But
We
yeah,
don't think that far ahead.
but the thing is, well, we have jump gates now in Aeon 14, so you could actually spread your destruction across the galaxy pretty quickly if you had a weapon. Because the interesting thing is that the rule was you couldn't send black holes through jump gates because you're putting a black hole through a wormhole. Is effectively what you're doing, and that just doesn't work. But Aertha figured how to do it in War in 1,000 Fronts, because when they're in the LMC, Large Metronomic Cloud, Aertha jumped a DMG in there, and the DMG had a black hole in it. So Aertha has figured out how to fire black holes through jump gates. So think about that. Fire black holes through jump gates. That's a day-ending sort of event.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only once Tuesday. So I guess that was just sort of like, you know, what happens when the weapons get bigger. And I bet you have to reset all this because we can't have people doing this forever.
And then we'll send FTT out again and
Yeah, let's do next galaxy. Sorry, we're kind of the Milky Way's smoke and ruin. We're gonna move over to Andromeda.
We won't ever do that again.
Yeah,
we learned our lesson.
Yeah, honestly,
we
never gonna do that
totally
again.
learned from our mistakes.
Whoops, we forgot.
Yeah, pretty much.
What did we learn? Let's do this.
Well, I mean,
That's about 1,200 to 13.
well, I mean, if you're gonna,
Right.
if you were to write science fiction stories where like humanity has progressed towards perfection, there's not much of a story there anymore.
I know,
You know, it's like,
right.
well, they're all perfect and they do the right thing all the time forever. So
Everyone's happy.
no conflict, no story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, guys, no other questions?
No other questions.
Dun dun. dun.
Well, I'm getting kind of hungry.
And I'm getting hungry too, so
Yeah.
I think it's time to go eat.
I know. We figured out how to make this work, so next time we're in one place.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, so a year from now this will be
Well,
really.
Aeon, we're a bunch of us at least, I think, are planning on going to the Space Coast thing in the summer.
Oh, we talked to. We need to get that in the calendar.
Yeah.
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 Our hotel is going to be able to like look at Cape Canaveral. Like we're probably 2 miles away from the launch pads. Maybe-
Nice.
Well, maybe from the edge of the launch pads. I don't know exactly how far the actual launch
For
pads.
us
But if you look on the
dummies,
map,
where is that in?
Cape
the-
Canaveral,
it's close to Florida,
Okay.
near Orlando.
Cocoa
Okay.
Beach.
So yeah, a bunch of us will be there, and they have a lot of fan activities. Like that's a conference; it's all about fans. So a bunch of fans will be there. I believe. I think a couple have already registered even. So
What's it called?
Space Coast
Space
something or other
Coast.
writers,
Okay.
Space Coast book lovers or something like that. Ironically, there's not a lot of science fiction authors there, but they're hoping I can help change that. I know it's kind of weird. It's
That's so weird.
they're hoping I can kind of change that and get more sci-fi there because I mean, yeah, it's Space Coast, you know. But I figure if nothing else, you know, whoever shows up, we'll just go tour anything that we can possibly tour on Cape Canaveral. Just
That'd be
geek out
sweet.
forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the plan. I think actually it's not time. I have to look and see what the launch schedule looks like for when we'll be there too, because that'd be pretty awesome.
That would be cool.
Be in a Sheraton, look out our window and see spaceships flying into space.
Yeah.
That would
What?
be pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
You remember which week it is?
I have to. It's somewhere in June or July.
June. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get some info in there to update everybody on that.
I'm
And
still
then we're
trying to figure out EonCon.
Aeon. Well, that'll be like mini Aeon Con, and then the next one I want to try and do is like glom onto one of the Portland conferences or Seattle conferences or something like that. And like a day before we'll have like all Aeon or something like that. So.
Yeah.
So we're gonna see each other before a year away from now. That's the
goal.
gist of this.
Okay.
Sweet.
Cool beans.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks everybody for tuning in. Sorry we were a little bit late, but we'll get this figured out next time. And again, if you have any questions we missed in the feed thing, just put it in the regular group and we'll catch up. So
We will still have the podcast. The podcast will resume on
Yeah.
Sunday.
your
Earlier
regularly
normal
scheduled
time, so-
podcast will resume.
Yes.
Yep.
Exactly.
And it's
So,
normal time.
Post your questions.
Yep.
All
All right.
Thanks everyone.
Yeah. Thanks for joining.
See you on the Intrepid.
See you on the Intrepid.